Christchurch teen Connor Whitehead appeals for one of those responsible to give themselves up. Taxpayers could be left with a $200 million hangover if COVID kills the festival season after the government announces plans to underwrite summer gigs. T's and C's apply. The runway's short and getting shorter. Air New Zealand braces for the summer rush once the super city is set free. Auckland retailers get ready for the midnight rush. And cycling to recycle, a cracker of a compost scheme. We'll have the details. Don't forget, you can watch us on Sky Channel 83.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. The firearm used to kill a Christchurch teenager at a party last Friday night has been found by the police. A 32-year-old man charged with murdering 16-year-old Connor Whitehead was remanded in custody earlier today, and 3 other people have been charged with being accessories to murder. Detective Senior Sergeant Nicola Reeves say one more person is still being sought in connection with the death. Speaking to media this afternoon, Connor's father, James Whitehead, made an emotional plea for that person to come forward.
Do the right thing. Hand yourself in. Right now, our focus is on Connor as we organise his funeral and celebration of his life.
James Whitehead says his son was an innocent bystander who should have been safe. The Prime Minister says people who came out on the streets today to protest against the government's COVID-19 restrictions are not representative of the majority of New Zealanders. Thousands of demonstrators marched through Wellington to gather outside Parliament at lunchtime, demanding the end of lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Jacinda Ardern says almost 90% of the population have been vaccinated and they understand the country is on a road back to normality.
What we saw today was not representative of the vast bulk of New Zealanders, and so actually my message would be to them, and it would be to say thank you. Thank you for being vaccinated. Thank you for doing what it takes to look after one another. What we saw today wasn't reflective of you and of New Zealand.
Many of the demonstrators were waving banners that featured false information about vaccines and COVID-19, and COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins says that's a worry.
It's clear that the level of disinformation out there does seem to be growing, and that there is a much more active and organised group spreading some of that disinformation. And so yes, that is a concern, because it means that people are potentially putting themselves and the people they care about at risk based on falsehoods.
Meanwhile, Chris Hipkins says he expects vaccine certificates to be available to the public late next week. Vaccinated people will need the pass in order to access many businesses and events when the country moves to the traffic light framework. Mr Hipkins says the certificates are going through their final trials this week. He says he'll provide an update on them tomorrow. Ruapehu's mayor says he can't believe the risks some teachers are posing to themselves and others by not getting vaccinated. Matiere School in King Country has a staff of 3 teachers, 3 support staff and a relief teacher. All are refusing vaccination. Don Cameron says a teacher's job is to protect young people.
I just shake my head, I'm sorry. I just don't agree with that stance. I think that's just quite crazy. It's putting the whole village at risk because some people do not want to be vaccinated.
Don Cameron says COVID cases in small communities can take off very quickly. An Auckland councillor says health authorities appear to have mandated home isolation for COVID-19 patients before planning enough wraparound support. A woman with the virus who's living in a caravan in her backyard says she's been unable to get advice and pain relief for her worsening symptoms or a mobile testing unit for her family. And a man with COVID-19 spent almost a week isolating in his car because he couldn't do it safely at home. Councillor Daniel Newman says home isolation can work, but only with adequate support.
What I can say from first-hand experience, if the support isn't there on a daily basis, if the outreach isn't there every single day of that home isolation, I think the risk of failure increases, and obviously we can't allow that to happen.
It's 5:03. The Warriors are set to return to Mount Smart Stadium for 5 home games next season. The NRL have released the draw for the 2022 competition, marking down the round 15 game on June the 18th as the Warriors' first home game in nearly 3 years. The match will be against this year's premiers Penrith. Also heading to Auckland in the later part of the season will be Melbourne Storm, West Tigers and the Bulldogs. The home matches, however, are dependent on COVID regulations. Defending champion Self Assured remains the favourite to win the New Zealand Trotting Cup at Addington and Christchurch this evening. The Mark Purdon, Hayden Cullen trained 6-year-old gelding is just ahead of Copy That and South Coast Ardin in the betting for the 3,200 metre race. Purdon is chasing his 7th cup as a driver that would put him equal with Ricky May for most wins. The race starts at 5:50. Moana Pasifika's players will have less than 7 weeks to prepare for their debut campaign in Super Rugby Pacific. Originally due to assemble last month, coach Aaron Major had hoped to have them together in December. But Major admits because of COVID restrictions still in place, they probably won't come together until the new year. The competition starts on February the 18th. And Lydia Ko has risen 2 places to 5th on the world golf rankings after her victory in Saudi Arabia at the weekend. That's the news.
COVID-positive people fall through the cracks.
He was moving every day because he couldn't stay in the same place.
Air New Zealand sets the rules for summer travel.
Simply a touch of a button. That will simply verify back to us, and that will then take you straight through to the boarding pass and you can get on the plane.
And the Big Apple opens up to the world.
Welcome back, those international visitors, to NYC.
Bringing the world to you. Morning Report weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Ko te matapai huarere mō Aotearoa. Here's our short forecast from mid-service to midnight Wednesday for Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. Generally fine with isolated showers in the afternoons and evenings. For Bay of Plenty, the Central High Country, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and the Tararua District. Mainly fine, isolated showers inland with possible thunderstorms in the afternoons and evenings. Areas of low cloud overnight. Waikato to Wellington, also Wairarapa, excluding the Tararua District. Marlborough and Nelson, fine apart from areas of low cloud or fog overnight, and again tomorrow night. For Bulla to Fiordland, areas of cloud, especially in the south. Patchy drizzle in Fiordland today and elsewhere tomorrow. Canterbury mostly cloudy with a few drizzle patches tomorrow morning and some fine breaks in the afternoons. Southland, Otago, fine spells. Isolated showers possible inland in the afternoons. Areas of low cloud or fog overnight and tomorrow night. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy with occasional drizzle. It's 6 minutes past 5.
Nā mihi marama, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Tonight, the father of a teenager killed at a birthday party pleads for a man on the run to come forward, urging him to do the right thing and turn himself in. But first, angry scenes have arrived at the door of democracy in the capital today, with thousands of protesters marching to Parliament. Their motive was unclear. Some angry at lockdowns, the vaccine and vaccine mandates. They arrived calling themselves freedom fighters and made sure they were heard by the decision makers inside. Snaking through the city, they hurled abuse at media and the police, demanding an end to COVID restrictions. Our reporter Jake McKee and cameraman Samuel Rillstone have the story.
They came angry and noisy. Angry about COVID, about lockdowns and about vaccine mandates. Throwing tennis balls at media and police, the protesters held flags and signs with an array of angry messages. Anti-lockdown, anti-vaccination, anti-media, anti-government. At Civic Square, there was barely a mask in sight. Social distancing non-existent. A woman over a loudspeaker asks people to stay in their bubbles just before the march down the road to Parliament. Led by motorbikes, the sea of protesters poured down the road. People on the street stopping to watch the commotion, others stuck in their vehicles with the roads blocked. This man wasn't impressed.
Yeah, a bit annoyed because I've got to go do my deliveries and stuff is holding me up there.
Security was ramped up at Parliament, with the crowd held back from the buildings, some trying to jump the railings. Speaker Trevor Mallard says security had never been so tight in his 30-plus years in the place. The people yelled at the building housing the decision makers. The crowd racked up.
Your deepest, darkest days is when we need to have each other, standing with each other, loving on each other and supporting each other.
The Those we spoke to espoused misinformation. It was clear they were angry and here for a variety of reasons. They mentioned false information about vaccines, but also want New Zealand to live with the virus, not concerned about the risks. This man says he isn't scared of COVID-19.
When I get COVID, I will not go to hospital because I'm too fit.
He cited a great source that informed his views, but didn't tell us what that was. Other people were upset about losing their jobs because they won't get vaccinated. Others just want to be back with family in Auckland. Inside, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern could hear it all. She says the protesters' views aren't representative of the bulk of New Zealand, who she thanks for doing their part in the country's effort to combat COVID-19.
We're at over 89% of eligible New Zealanders having had their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. And I think they know and appreciate that we're on a road to be able to open up more, to having a bit more of that normality back. And yes, it's been a tough journey, but I think they can see that what we've done has been on behalf of everyone.
New Zealand may be moving forward in its COVID-19 response, but it's clear not everyone is wanting to be on the same page.
If you're listening to that on radio, we'll put the video from Jake and Samuel's piece up on our web page. Police say the demonstrations on Parliament grounds were largely peaceful and no arrests were made today. Follow-up enforcement action will be considered by police in the coming days. In Tamaki Makaurau, police cleared a group of protesters who were blocking a checkpoint operation at Auckland's northern boundary this morning. In the process, they say an officer was bitten. Police say they were also at demonstrations in Auckland, Balclutha, Tauranga and Whangarei. It is 11 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rā watu mo te whakarongo mai. Thanks for listening. E haere ake nei. Coming up, Minister Stuart Nash on backing up the band with a taxpayer-funded insurance policy for summer festivals. In the past hour, the father of slain teenager Connor Whitehead has held an emotional press conference and appealed for a person involved in his son's death to hand themselves in. A 32-year-old man accused of shooting the 16-year-old dead at a 15th birthday party on the weekend is in custody, along with 3 others also facing charges. But one person who police believe was also involved in Connor's death is still at large. And Detective Senior Sergeant Nicola Reeves appealed for that person to come forward.
We urge you to put yourself in the shoes of Connor's family and think how you would feel if this was your loved one who had died in these circumstances. The message is very simple. Now is the time to do the right thing and come and speak with us. Connor had his whole life ahead of him. And this brutal and senseless incident has robbed that from him and his family.
Connor's dad, James, said the family were heartbroken at his senseless murder.
We would like to reiterate the police's message to the individual who has not yet come forward. Do the right thing. Hand yourself in.
James Whitehead told media his son was a friend to all, including his mum Cheryl and 3 siblings.
Connor was an innocent bystander on Friday. He was at a party with his friends. He should have been safe and he should be home with us. Connor did not know the people who killed him. He was not involved in whatever it was that sparked this unimaginable outcome. Our family have no connection to those involved in this horrible attack. While we have many questions that need answers, right now we want to remember and celebrate Connor for the amazing son, brother and friend he was. Connor was loved by everyone and he cared about his family and friends deeply.
In choking back tears, James said it was a comfort some of Connor's friends were with him when he died.
He was an amazing kid. He loved music. Him and his friends were making music. He put out a song. I only heard that after he passed away. Connor had dreams, and we're devastated we will not see him live his life and reach his potential. He had plans to go to university and study law. He was very focused, and for all those dreams to be taken from him and us is tragic. Connor and I were father and son. We were mates. Recently I discovered a YouTube channel that had a lot of karaoke versions of 90s hip-hop. We spent an evening rapping backwards and forwards to Tribe Called Quest and Wu-Tang Clan. It's one of my most cherished memories of him. We were going to go see Spider-Man next month, the new movie coming out. We were looking forward to that. I got tickets for Connor and me to go and see Snoop Dogg next year. He was so excited. He was so looking forward to that. I've not only lost my son, Cheryl's not only lost his son, but we have lost a friend.
The Whitehead family has thanked emergency services, including the first police officers at the scene who tried to save Connor's life. It is 5:15. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. Vaccination-resistant teachers are creating headaches for principals as the deadline for the government's vaccination mandate draws nearer. They're figuring out how to cover classes on Tuesday when staff who have not had at least their first dose are no longer allowed on site. Those in rural areas warn there are not enough relief teachers to fill the gaps, and they fear they won't be able to hire permanent replacements next year. Here's our education correspondent, John Gerritsen.
Nelson Principals Association President Simon Beattie says the vaccine mandate is creating challenging situations.
This is huge. I mean, we're the frontline messengers faced with the obvious impact of having staff with career pathways that will be blocked and ended for some. We acknowledge that among those unwilling to vaccinate, there are relationship. There's years of experience and capability that will be a huge loss to our organisation. That takes a toll on us at the front line.
He says most schools in the region have only a small percentage of staff who are hesitant about the vaccination, but a couple might lose more. Simon Beattie says schools can't be sure who will get their vaccination by Monday, so it's hard to prepare for next week.
A huge challenge for us as principals is to be prepared for whatever eventuates on the 16th and to kind of have cover on standby ready if required, but equally to be able to welcome those people back and carry on as normal if they choose to be vaccinated.
Simon Bell from the Southland Primary Principals Association says nearly 60% of its 73 member schools are expecting to lose staff next week. That's about 100 people, but it's hard to get an exact figure.
We don't have, not that we know of, any sort of schools within Southland that where across the staff are choosing not to be. As I said, a lot of it's just one or a couple, or might know of a couple but might have 5 others that are not sure. Do you know what I mean? So it's just that sort of principals are trying to gather that information and talk to staff.
He says he doesn't know how they'll find replacements.
We traditionally struggle to attract teachers down to our positions. So this was always going to be a difficult one when the mandate came in. And I think the biggest worry for principals was obviously where are we going to find, as of the 16th, where are we going to find these extra teachers to fill some of these positions?
The early childhood sector faces similar problems. In Golden Bay, one centre has told RNZ it's closing on Friday because half its staff will not comply with the vaccine mandate and it's impossible to replace them. Nelson Tasman Kindergarten's Chief Executive, Craig Vercoe, says the issue is the most divisive he's seen in 30 years because it affects parents, not just teachers.
Certainly the feedback we're getting is that there are pockets of community that are really struggling with the mandate and the application of it, particularly in that parent space where traditionally they were there as helpers, but potentially now be seen as volunteers on site.
He says only 10 to 15% of the organisation's teachers appear to be hesitant about the vaccination, and it's not expecting to close any of its sites.
And some breaking news just in from the police. There are multiple fatalities at a crash on State Highway 1. This is State Highway 1 south of Levin. The road is closed there after a serious crash which happened around 3 o'clock. Police can confirm that there are multiple fatalities. However, further information is unable to be provided at this stage. There are no diversions in place and police are working to be able to reopen one lane of the road as quickly as possible, and they're going to provide more information as soon as it comes to hand. State Highway 1 south of Levin, a serious multi-fatality crash there. Road closed at this point. Police working to reopen at least one lane. Taxpayers could be left with a $200 million hangover if COVID kills the summer festival season. The government's announced a safety net for the sector, underwriting 90% of unrecoverable costs if events have to be canned or postponed due to COVID and alert level restrictions. But terms and conditions apply. To qualify for the taxpayer insurance, events need to be ticketed, have an audience of at least 5,000, use vaccination certificates and be scheduled between 17 December and April 3rd. Minister for Economic and Regional Development as well as Tourism, Stuart Nash, says the event sector needed clarity.
Well, because event organisers are entering that sort of very tight window where they need a level of certainty. We're operating in an uncertain environment, of that there is no doubt. And we believe that festivals are a really important part of a good Kiwi summer. So there are two reasons. First of all, it's to encourage those who haven't got vaccinated to get vaccinated, because you won't be able to attend these festivals if you're not vaccinated. And the second thing is, let's go hard, let's have a great summer. We believe we can, but this is just providing a level of certainty to promoters of these events.
Is it just festivals or who qualifies?
So any organisation, any event or festival or concert over 5,000 people, it's got to be, so it's a commercial organisation, so it's got to be open to the public. You've got to have COVID vaccinations, and it's got to be held between the 17th of December this year and the 3rd of April 2022, which is the last weekend of daylight saving.
So, I mean, why did you choose those parameters? Because you say people need certainty. Lots of events needed certainty. Various marathons needed certainty. What about the Boxing Day races? What about Cup Week just this week? And the Ironman and various theatres. So why are choosing these festivals as the summer winners?
Well, it's actually any event that's ticketed and open to the public. So, any of those events that you mentioned, if there's any uncertainty there, if they want to check out whether they actually do qualify, my advice is go to the MB website at the end of the week and check it out. But basically,
setting a limit of 5,000, Minister, rules out a ton of events.
It does, but it still includes between 250 and 200 events. So there's still a number of events there. But the main criteria, Lisa, is that these are regionally significant events. They bring a lot of money into a local economy, and they play a really important part in the regions within which they're held.
But so are some of those other events. So are race days, cup weeks, marathons and sports-based events which are public, people pay entry for. They just maybe don't scrape in on that 5,000 mark. So are you choosing winners?
No, not at all. We had to draw the line somewhere, Lisa. There's no doubt about that. And 5,000 was a number that we canvassed the industry on. And, like I said, it's between 200 and 250 events. There are a lot of events that are included in this, and that includes sports events, it includes concerts. So we're not just talking about rhythm and vines here. It's literally any event over 5,000 people or forecast to be over 5,000 people that's ticketed to the public.
It's, if you're a private investor looking at this, right, and let's take Rhythm and Vines as an example, because it's one that you've mentioned. If you were a private individual looking at the odds here, the risk simply wouldn't be worth taking, right? So why should taxpayers foot the bill, potentially, for such a risky bet?
Well, we think that Rhythm and Vines will go ahead. If everything goes to plan, then there'll be 20,000 plus Kiwis enjoying a fantastic Gisborne New Year's at Rhythm and Vines. But what we are saying is it is really difficult for the promoter to fork out, $4 to $5 million without a degree of certainty. We have provided that degree of certainty, but we expect these events to go ahead. However, as mentioned, we are living in uncertain times. And so, event promoters did need a level of confidence to be able to continue to plan these.
What about smaller event promoters? Don't they deserve the same confidence? Like, for example, weddings or Christmas parties that have more than 100 people and less than 5,000. Why don't they get a government insurance policy?
Well, as mentioned, Lisa, this was about reasonably significant events that brought a lot of money into the economy within which they're held. We had to draw a line somewhere. You can't in essence, underwrite every single Christmas party with 100 people. The cost of the taxpayer would be substantial. But having said that, we're really, really hopeful that there'll be hundreds of thousands of Kiwis enjoying Christmas parties up and down this country. But what we are doing is we're providing a level of certainty to event promoters with these large events that have regional significance.
Okay, so you've just said that you believe that it's going to go ahead, Rhythm and Vines is going to go ahead. Why? Why do you think they're going to reach their 90% double vaccination rate? They're only sitting at 68% for double doses, and, we're 6 weeks away from Christmas. How can they get there in time for this festival?
Kiwis are going very hard. As you know, all DHBs, and including Tairāwhiti, are spending a lot of time, effort and resources to have conversations with those who are vaccine hesitant. I mean, I have no doubt that the more conversations we have and the more reach we have into these slightly hard-to-reach communities, the greater the uptake will be. So I am confident, Lisa, that we will reach 90% in the areas within which festivals are held.
Then your insurance policy is not needed then. If you're that confident, why are you putting up this policy for insurance cover, in essence?
Well, it's to provide confidence to the event promoter. So I'm confident, and we want to give them a level of confidence.
So it is in no way, in your view, an admission that Tairāwhiti isn't going to make its double vaccination target in time for this festival?
No admission at all. I mean, my daughter goes to Rhythm and Vine. She has a fantastic time there with all her friends. And I would hate to think that she's at a festival with over 20,000 people that aren't vaccinated. Hence the reason why, I just want to reiterate this, Lisa, to go to any of these festivals, you have to have double vaxxed, and you've got to be able to prove that. So, as mentioned, it's a way to ensure that a section of the community think they're bulletproof, actually get their full vaccination.
Okay, so if this is about certainty, on November the 29th, when your Cabinet gathers together to reassess the situation with targets, if Tairāwhiti is not going to make double vax 90% in time for this festival, are you just going to waive that requirement?
No, I'm not going to preempt anything that Cabinet makes a decision on, but nor will I preempt the good people of...
But it's not off the table then? It's not off the table, it's a possibility.
Well, what we have said is this kicks in when it becomes very clear that the alert level under which the event or the area within which the event operates means that you cannot hold a festival, or an area where there are more than 50% of the tickets have been sold means you can't move out of there.
What's the government's potential liability here? You say 200 to 250 events. What's your most significant liability?
Well, we'll put aside $200 million for this, but I'm hopeful that not a dollar will have to leave the pocket of the Minister of Finance. Hey, Lisa, one other thing that I do want to mention in terms of wedding venues and Christmas party function venues that you've mentioned, keeping in mind events only have one day or a weekend to recover their costs, okay? So if they put out $5 million for a large festival and they can't hold it, then that's done. Their summer is over. So quite different from a wedding venue.
And that was Minister Stuart Nash there. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira, ānei nā kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. What do you think of that? Underwriting festival events. They've got to have 5,000 plus people there, would have been using a COVID vaccine certificate and, have to be cancelled or postponed due to COVID restrictions. $200 million to underwrite those events. Have they set the bar at the right place? Should they be doing it all at all? Let us know what you think. Pātui mai, text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. The biggest party of the year in Christchurch is still happening today, despite a ban on spectators at Addington Raceway. COVID rules limiting large crowds meant just 1,200 members, trainers and sponsors were allowed in for Cup Day. But as Conan Young and cameraman Nate McKinnon found out, it doesn't stop people putting on their finest and uncorking the bubbly.
As anybody who's been to Cup Day in Ōtautahi will tell you, the racing is mostly an excuse to get dressed up and party with friends. But for the lucky few that got to see this year's scaled-down event, the focus was firmly on the racing. Speaking to us just before gates opened today, Addington Raceway's Darren Williams said there was a strange air of calm.
Everyone's sort of wandering around going, we're under control. Normally by now we'd have 5,000-6,000 people already here and building to 20,000-25,000. So 1,000 people is going to feel a bit weird.
Driver Robbie Close took time out from preparing to compete in 9 of today's races to fill us in on how he was feeling about racing in front of a bunch of mostly empty stands.
I think the cheer and excitement, especially when halfway down you're looming into it and you get that excitement from the crowd and everyone yelling. So, that might take a wee bit down on it, but hey, it's still Cup days.
But Ōtautahi isn't the sort of place that's going to let a little bit of COVID get in the way of having a good time. Bars around the city open their doors early, many laying on champagne breakfasts and putting the races up on big screens and allowing people to enjoy the day in a safely distanced way. The manager of Aikman's Bar, Jeremy Stevens, says complying with level 2 seated and served rules means they'll only be able to host half the number of punters they would normally get in for Cup Day.
So it's going to be a bizarre afternoon. We're not sure what to expect, but we're ready. So fingers crossed.
I just heard another bottle pop there. So you've had people in here since 10 o'clock?
Since 10 o'clock this morning. We had 60 people on a breakfast package, and now we've got 220 in for a lunch. So all those are on a champagne package to get the most out of people.
The weather never really got out of first gear, but the crowds at this bar were determined to make the most of things and strut their stuff.
We've been here about half an hour and it's been amazing service, lovely people, so it's been a really cool environment so far, and we're just hanging out for a really beautiful day. Hopefully the weather clears up, but the company's great and the environment's perfect, so it's good.
Excellent. Now look, we do radio as well, so you're going to have to describe your fascinator for us.
This one is black and feathery and just quite big and out there. It's a bit different. Wasn't mine. I gifted it off a friend, and I thought, what a great day to use it, and a great opportunity to get it out and about.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. And how about you guys? No fascinators?
Oh,
no, just low key.
Yeah, no. Let the dress do it all.
Yeah, she's letting the dress do it all. Sweet hair clip.
Yeah.
And then what about for yourself, mate? Would you normally be at the races today?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, we take the whole week off. A group of us getting behind it. Embrace the whole week. Roll into Wednesday at Riccarton, Thursday Addington Greyhounds, and then Friday show day, and then we've got Saturday back at Riccarton, and then try not to die come Sunday. Yeah.
So what about this week? What do you reckon this will be like?
It'll be different, but I think if you like to punt and you like a cold stub, I think you're still in for a hell of a week.
And what about this weather?
I don't mind it, mate. Yeah. Like I say, we're not wearing dresses, so we're doing all right.
What about for you guys?
Yeah.
How are you guys feeling?
Long sleeves are the key.
Yeah?
I didn't think it through very well, really. Hey, at least it's not pouring.
Bars will be back hosting race day crowds this Saturday for the gallops at Riccarton Raceway's 1,000 guineas.
And check out Conan and Nate's video on RNZ's website. Extra points for Conan for knowing what a fascinator is. Kia ora e te iwi e haere nei e a checkpoint. Air New Zealand is taxiing for takeoff once the super city is set free. We talked to the founder of Rhythm and Vines about the government joining the backup band and the rules of engagement for Auckland's retail resurgence. Homai o whakaaro, we'd love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. You can get in touch on text 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can flick us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It's time for the headlines. Ane Amarama, Mina Pitapita Kōrero.
Thank you, Lisa. The Prime Minister says the fact almost 90% of the population has been vaccinated against COVID-19 shows that today's protest at Parliament was not representative of the feeling in the country. Thousands of demonstrators marched through Wellington demanding the end of lockdowns and vaccine mandates. But Jacinda Ardern says the majority of people recognise the vaccination program and relaxing of restrictions shows the country is on a road back to normality. The COVID-19 response minister, however, says he's worried at the rising level of disinformation in New Zealand. Many of the demonstrators at Parliament were waving banners that featured false information about vaccines and COVID-19. Chris Hipkins says while disinformation is rising, it's not at levels seen overseas. A researcher on disinformation told RNZ earlier it appears the demonstration attracted many different groups who joined to protest against what they consider to be overreaching by the government. Meanwhile, Mr Hipkins says he'll provide an update on vaccination certificates tomorrow and expects them to be available to the public next week. Vaccinated people will need the pass in order to access many businesses and events when the country moves to the traffic light framework. He says the certificates are going through their final trials this week. A Central North Island mayor is shaking his head in disbelief at the attitude of some teachers who are refusing to get vaccinated against COVID-19. King Country's Matiere School has 7 staff, all of whom are refusing to get vaccinated ahead of a deadline next week. Ruapehu's mayor Don Cameron says small towns are particularly vulnerable to an outbreak, and he felt the attitude of the school staff was crazy. And State Highway 1 south of Levin is closed following a crash between a truck and a car this afternoon that has killed several people. Police say they're working to reopen one lane. There is no detour available. We'll have our next news and sport update at 6.
Kia ora rā e hoa, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa e nai ko Nona Peltier, who's here to talk business. Nona, another big bank has made a big profit. It's the Bank of New Zealand this time, so what's a big profit?
Well, they've risen 74% on a year ago to $1.3 billion. And that's leaving aside one-off items. The bank's bottom line rose more than 12% to $1 billion. Now, that's a result of its home loan book growing 7.5%, as well as an improvement in bad debts.
Noni, you sound like you need a little cough. You have a cough. We'll talk amongst ourselves for a minute, because the other story that we're going to talk about is about the country's biggest car dealer. And this dealer is considering listing on the New Zealand and Australian Stock Exchange. Come in, Nona.
I'm here.
What company are we talking about?
It's a good thing I had some water by my side, right?
Yeah, we care. We care about you, Nona.
Thank you so much. Okay, so this is a company called Armstrong's. I don't know if a number of people have heard of it, but they sold about 12,000 cars last year with a turnover of nearly $450 million. So they're looking at listing on the New Zealand and Australian stock exchanges. They're reviewing their capital structure at the moment. They're looking forward to expansion, the next chapter in its growth. And so this is a company that we're going to hear more from. We're expecting to hear more from them just in the first quarter of next year. And just going back to that banking profit story, not to forget that basically over the past 10 days, the ANZ, Bank of New Zealand and Westpac have reported collective annual profits of more than $4 billion. And just a reminder, back in the June result, this is the one that was reported in August by the ASB, their profit rose 39% to $1.3 billion. So they're all doing really well, and it's as a result really of that home loan growth. That's expected to level off a little bit, and what we've heard from a number of economists is that they would like to see one of the banks, any of the banks or all of the banks, focus more on providing loans to businesses that have been doing it tough and need that capital to grow, especially now as we come out of COVID.
Yeah, those are some big numbers, Nona. What about on the market? Any big numbers there?
Well, not as many, no, I have to say. The top 50 index, it rose more than 1/3%, which is pretty good. We saw that there was very strong growth in the Dow Jones. Average hit a record high. Asian stocks tended to follow as well. So we rose more than 1/3%. That was a 49-point gain to 13,091. And the dollar is steady at 71.5 US cents, 96.7 Australian, and 52.7 pence.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite. That's Nona Peltier with our business update. It is a short runway and it's getting shorter. Air New Zealand estimates it could take up to 6 weeks to prepare to fly Kiwis to their chosen Christmas destination. So it needs a border call urgently. Customers aged 12 or over will also need to be double vaxxed or have proof of a negative COVID test 72 hours before departure to fly with the national carrier this summer. Now that policy kicks in from the 14th of December. And next week the government will announce exactly when Auckland's border is due to reopen, with a mass exodus expected over the summer break. Here's Air New Zealand boss Greg Foran with the logistics.
Well, the reality is for domestic, we really need the best part of 4 to 6 weeks. So we have to do something that we've actually been doing since the beginning of COVID, i.e. for 20 months, which is we have to place, if you like, some bets on the board. And we're sort of doing that in December. So, you know, if you got onto our site at the moment, you'd see there were plenty of flights available in December, and we'll leave those there. And hopefully we're going to be able to fly them. If we can't, then unfortunately we end up cancelling them at reasonably late notice, which puts a lot of pressure on everyone in the organisation. But we just don't have the ability to turn the business around on a dime. You know, you've got to get planes in the right area, you've got to get people trained. You know, it's quite a lengthy process to restart an airline.
So that border announcement next week is absolutely critical for you.
Ideally, we would like to know even right now what's happening, Lisa, but, we appreciate that sometimes these decisions come a bit later on in the piece, so we just have to adjust accordingly. But absolutely, each day counts.
Excuse the expression, even with an announcement next week, are you still running out of runway?
I think we're looking okay at this stage, Lisa. We've made some decisions already, and if we end up having to adjust, then it will be winding back what we have in place. But we've got ourselves reasonably juiced up for a pretty decent amount of flying through December, January, February.
Can you put more on if you need to?
We can, and we will. And it's just going to be a matter of as soon as we can get some information, we'll move accordingly.
What can we expect in terms of deals? You got anything coming up?
There's some fantastic prices actually through December and January at the moment, and I was just having a look at those. Some of these flights one way, $49, $59, and that's reflective of the fact that we've put on quite a bit of capacity, and a lot of people are still holding back to see what's going to happen. And no doubt, if we do get a green light to go, then I think we'll see plenty of people taking up those offers.
What has COVID taught you about the need to be loyal to smaller regions?
A lot. And, we've reflected that in our thinking and, in the more recent lockdown that we've experienced, putting on those flights from Kerry to Wellington were a really big deal.
Okay, so what areas might you put on more flights to?
Well, I know some of the areas the teams are looking at is what's happening out of Tauranga, what's happening out of Nelson, for example, and saying, can we do some more in some of those locations direct to other areas?
So how much has Auckland being shut down for basically 3 months cost you guys?
Well, we've shared with the market that's between $25 to $35 million a month, not being able to operate that part of our business. So effectively, domestic, when it gets shut down, is sort of a $45 million to $55 million cost per month. Auckland represents about 60% of that. And so it's pretty significant.
Ouch, 90 million. It's more than just a little bit significant, isn't it?
Well, yeah, as I said, 55 million if the entire country is impacted, around circa that figure, but when Auckland gets impacted, it's 25 to 35. So it's a big issue for us, and really when you think about it, Air New Zealand now for some time has really only been operating outside of Auckland and cargo flights, and what are we now, about 640 days into COVID. So we are really looking forward to getting back out, getting some flying going, and ideally getting some people direct to New York soon.
Yeah, so do you feel the envy when you look at an airline like Qantas?
A little, and I think it would be fair to say that all of us in Air New Zealand look across the water and see other countries starting to move. America opened up November 8. Providing you're vaccinated and you undertake a test, Europe is pretty much open. Australia, as you've mentioned, is moving ahead. Our time will come. It's a decision for the government in terms of how they do that, but we're willing, we're ready, and we know that our customers are very keen to be able to get underway with some travel.
Given the amount of planning you have to do, when are you penciling in New York then? You mentioned that.
Yes, we are penciling that in, and at this stage that will occur towards the end of next year.
So if New York is the first instance to see how it fires up, Cook Islands, quarantine-free travel from January next year, what's the next cab off the rank, do you reckon?
Well, it's a tough one to pick, isn't it? And we've been sort of playing this game of roulette now for a while. So all we've proven to ourselves generally is that we're not all that good at getting it right.
Hey, but forecasting is part of your business, Greg, so what's your pick?
We're calling it scenario planning, Lisa. We've stopped calling it forecast, and we run multiple scenarios. Look, I'm guessing at some point we might be able to get some action happening across the Tasman at some stage, but we'll just have to wait and see when that will be.
First quarter of next year, do you reckon?
Absolutely. I do think by the end of the first quarter next year, we will have seen a number of things play out, and with a bit of luck, The key here is to relax the managed isolation requirements. That's the thing that dampens demand, and then the second thing is pre-departure testing.
And that's the boss of Air New Zealand, Greg Foran there. It is 16 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muri ake ina pita pita kōrero. After the news at 6, the woman with COVID isolating in a caravan. The Ruapehu District Mayor is bitterly disappointed that teachers at a small rural school in his region are refusing to get vaccinated. Matiere School in King Country has a staff of 3 teachers, 3 support staff and a relief teacher. And the principal says none of them will get the doses. It means the school won't be able to open on Monday when the vaccine mandate for teachers comes into play. Andrew McRae reports.
The decision by Matiere school teachers to not get vaccinated has shocked locals. Uhura farmer Scott Gower sent his children there when they were younger. He says the area has a number of alternative lifestylers, so he's not surprised they probably don't want the vaccine. But the school is a different matter.
I would have thought school teachers and boards of trustees and that would have been seen the sense in being vaccinated, and the responsibility of being vaccinated or getting vaccinated as well. I think it's a responsibility that they have for their community and the kids and those kids going home.
He's incredulous that a handful of people can put the community at risk.
We're lucky that we've still been able to operate, and we're waiting for people to get vaccinated so the country can sort of start moving to some normality. And so they're not only holding the country to ransom, these guys are holding their little communities to ransom now.
The 40 or so children at Matiere School are expected to have to revert to remote learning next week when the vaccination mandate takes effect. Federated Farmers Rural Education spokesperson Wayne Langford says staffing shortages at rural schools has been a long-running issue and the mandate could exacerbate that. He says schools are having to consider their options. Ruapehu Mayor Don Cameron is not happy.
They've got to understand they've got to protect their young people. And I just shake my head, I'm sorry. I just don't agree with that stance. I think that's just quite crazy. It's putting the whole village at risk because some people do not want to be vaccinated.
He says COVID cases in small communities will take off very quickly.
If someone comes in here and is COVID positive, it will spread like wildfire. We just know that, and we're really concerned about that. And of course, it doesn't choose whether it's young or old. It will. Anybody that's unvaccinated will get sick.
It's a view supported by fellow King Country Mayor Waitomo District's John Robertson.
Clearly, we need to get the message out to encourage people to get vaccinated, whether they be teachers or meat workers or whatever. And this is important for us to keep people out of hospital and, to be honest, to prevent death.
On the streets of Tikawiti, there was some support for the teachers.
I think it's people's choice. I think it's an individual decision because the vaccine hasn't been proven to prevent you from getting COVID.
I just think that it's not everyone is able to get them, so I think that's needs to be considered into the factors as well, eh?
Well, I think of course they should be. They should be vaccinated. Look after the children, save the children.
That I am pro-choice and I don't really feel like that people should be told that they have to do something that's against their wishes.
It's estimated that in King Country alone, about 1/3 of teachers were refusing COVID vaccination.
A lot of you getting in touch already about the interview with Stuart Nash. This is about the basically taxpayer-funded insurance underwrite of summer festivals. They can claim back unrecoverable funds, and we're underwriting to the extent of $200 million at this stage. This listener says, concerts getting taxpayer cash. What about other businesses? Labor is buying the youth vote. And this one, trail runs really top 800 people. The race event promoters are hurting too. Richard says $200 million to try and keep the youth vote. Also, the 20 to 29 is low vaccine, so may force vaccinations for that age range. Lynn says it's a great strategy to get young people vaccinated. Do keep your feedback coming, 2101. Let's go to Twizel now, where one woman is using pedal power to generate compost. Coraline Scully set up a Compost Bike, a free service to collect people's food scraps and divert them from landfill, turn them into yummy goodness for the garden, and she joins me now. Hi there, what inspired you to do this?
Hi, I'm studying permaculture, which is like a way to design houses and communities and gardens to be more sustainable. So through studying that, I came across other people doing Compost Bike all around the world, and there are others in New Zealand as well, and so that's what set me up, basically.
So, Coraline, how does it work?
It's very simple. People register and receive a bucket, and then they collect their food scraps. And then every week I go with my bike and trailer, and I collect their food scraps and take them back home and put them on a compost heap, and that's it.
So how many kilometres are you putting in on your bike?
I'm actually not sure. It takes me around 2.5 hours every Wednesday cycling.
And how much food waste are you picking up?
2 boxes, like 60-litre boxes per Wednesday.
And so what is it basically, Coraline, that's in it? Is it, just your standard vegetable peel, or what are you getting from people?
Yeah, basically vegetables, fruits, scraps and leftovers. Sometimes some green waste as well, like in small amounts, because the bucket is 20 litres, so not too much. But yeah, basically that.
So once you've got it, you take it back to your place, and how long does it take to cook up a good compost brew?
So at the moment, I've been doing this for 2 months, and I would say it's probably still a month or 2 away, maybe, I think, yeah.
And your neighbours and your community, how have they reacted to it?
Oh, they were super, super encouraging. That was really positive straight from the start. So it's great. It's great to have all this energy that's so positive around it, and to see people so happy to have a solution for their food scraps.
And what about funding for the project? How have you managed that?
I set up a plan and a budget, and I contacted the council, Mackenzie Council, and they just found a little grant from the the waste fund, and yeah, basically that came through that, which was very, very welcome, just to set it all up.
Before you head off, can you give us a couple of quick tips for starting up our own compost?
It's very easy. Just grab some random pallets for free, a few screws, make a bin out of that, cubic meter, and that's it. You just need to put your food scraps in and try to mix with half food scraps and half brown waste, so dry leaves, things like that. Sawdust is awesome as well. It's absolutely amazing to get your compost heap really warm very fast. And that's it. That's my advice.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Best of luck. That is Coraline Scully, who's doing well. Bicycles around and picks up the food waste to make fantastic compost. And it's still a few weeks off the perfect brew, she reckons. Auckland retailers are asking customers to be patient tomorrow as they work out the new alert level rules on the job. The Supercity moves to 3.2 tomorrow, allowing shops to reopen with masks and social distancing in place. Reporter Louise Tanuth and camera operator Marika Habazi have the story.
Cardboard boxes filled with jeans and denim shorts are scattered across the floor at Service Denim in Ponsonby. Staff are busy unpacking the new summer stock as they prepare for the first rush of customers in 12 weeks. Everyone's been briefed on making sure customers stay 2 metres apart. But with 4 stores in Auckland, Director David Charles says they'll be working out how many people each shop can hold tomorrow.
We'll gauge that as we go. But, we've been to plenty of supermarkets, we've been to plenty of other businesses that have been open, so we kind of know what's the right amount.
Social distancing extends to the changing rooms. Only half will be used to maintain distance while trying on clothes. As for masks, David says they're taking a strict approach.
We've actually, as a company, decided that we're not going to accept people coming in with exemptions. We feel that it's a bit loose You can download an exemption pretty easily online, and we don't really want to put our staff at risk of not having people walking around with masks. And just because they've got an exemption, we don't know if they're double vaxxed, or we don't know what their status is health-wise. And so we feel that anybody coming into our business needs to wear a mask.
They share this space with Rocket Espresso, who are still only allowed to do takeaways at 3.2, so there will be no flat white for shoppers tomorrow. The makeshift wall between them is staying put. That's confusing, even for David.
I'm actually not too sure. I've got to ask. Are we opening this door tomorrow? No, so we're not. 2 different entrances, and we'll have that partition door closed, so 2 different spaces, so quite safe for everybody.
In Newmarket at furniture and homeware store Cheetah, they're grappling with a similar issue. Their store shares the same space as Daily Bread Bakery, and they also use the same entrance. Sales manager Willie Way says they'll do their best to make it clear they're 2 separate businesses and under different restrictions.
We will definitely set up different destinations. For if you're coming for a coffee, we will set up a gate, just come in for a coffee. If you come in to shop, we will set up a path just for shopping.
If staff want to give customers advice, they'll need to do it from a 2-metre distance.
We always have to ask the customer if they are comfortable with us around. So we will ask for their permission first before we proceed. But obviously, if the customer feel comfortable, we will feel comfortable too. So
they're hoping to fit about 25 people in store with distancing in place. Round the corner at Hype DC shoe store, assistant manager Cole King is busy prepping for tomorrow, putting out distancing stickers and sanitizer. He says it's tricky with shoes, as under the restrictions they can't physically help customers find the right fit.
We'll go out back, give you the shoe that you're asking to try on. We'll give the box to you and we'll kind of take you through the rundown of the size, the fit, how it's meant to feel, and at the end of the day it's going to have to be up to you because we can't have that hands-on.
They've closed off an entrance from the mall, leaving just a side street entrance to keep an eye on. And when customers do come in, it's going to be a tight squeeze.
There'll only be 2 of us on, and then obviously we count as the capacity as well, so it's not going to be very many people in store.
But he's grateful they have some control being a smaller store. Meanwhile, a queue of about 100 people has already formed outside Sylvia Park in anticipation of JD's sports store opening tomorrow.
How long have you been waiting so far?
8 hours. My friends, they come and drop off the food, and then they go, and then somebody else comes here, and then they go. But yeah, it's fun, it's fun.
If this shopper's anticipation is anything to go by, tomorrow will be a huge day for retailers.
Check out Marika and Louisa's video. We'll chuck it up on our web page. Already queuing for 8 hours. Wow. Are you going to get in the line for something at the shops tomorrow in Auckland? Text us on 2101. A year ago today, a weather bomb ripped through Napier, leaving a flood in its wake. Nearly 600 properties were damaged, with over 100 left uninhabitable. Almost 200 people had to leave their homes, and a handful still haven't returned. Here's our Hawke's Bay reporter, Tom Kitchen.
With the pot in hand, Freeman White is digging out the rainwater again. He did this a year ago, when he nearly died after a landslide hurtled towards the back of his home. Now he's been set back a few steps.
We're standing up behind my villa on Bluff Hill, and we were ready to actually start building this massive retaining wall tomorrow, but we had about 2 weeks of pretty consistent rain, so we've had a bit of a collapse here, nothing major, nothing compared to what it was last year.
He's nowhere near back in his home. The work on the house itself hasn't properly started.
I get people all the time, if I'm in the supermarket or wherever, walking down the street, people expecting that insurance paid for everything and we're back in our house now and it's fine. A year later, well, I'm afraid not. It's just not. It's not that simple, and it's not really a happy story yet. It is going to be, because I'm not going to give up on it.
On the other side of Mataruaho or Napier Hill, Paul Matthews' backyard has only got messier since last year. He had to cut down trees that were an imminent risk.
I've paid to have all those trees dropped, but I had to have them dropped on top of my mess. So now I've got 7 or 8 large trees on top of my landslip.
Progress is slowly being made, even if part of that is the house being deemed a write-off. He thinks the process might take 5 to 10 years.
Well, I'm committed to the fact that I have to get on and clean up and stabilise the land, so I don't know about rebuilding just yet. I don't even know how much I'm in for yet.
Napier Mayor Kirsten Wise remembers the pressures of last year all too well.
As a first-term mayor, declaring a state of emergency just after 12 months of being in the role isn't something that's high on your list, of your bucket list, I would have to say.
Just over a week ago, there was a quick blast of heavy rain and thunderstorms which filled her with trepidation.
When we do get a big dump of rain, it's only natural that our community, and particularly those who were significantly impacted, are going to be very concerned and quite anxious.
The Napier City Council plans to spend more than $40 million on upgrading the stormwater system. But Ms Wise fears the 3 water reforms from central government could upend this.
That is the real concern that we have here in Napier, and particularly because the central government model that they have put on the table actually has a fraction of the investment planned in our 3 waters compared to our own plan that we have.
The council also wants residents to keep a watchful eye on things at their own homes, asking them to clear gutters and drains when intense rain is forecast. Longer term, it's encouraging a move away from designs that use impermeable surfaces like concrete.
OK, your thoughts on the government insurance scheme for summer festivals. This person says a kick in the guts to announce the government insurance policy on Cup Day. That would have been a low-risk underwrite in COVID-free South Island for this North Island-focused government. Another person says event underwriting is not a risk taxpayers should take on.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. The father of slain teenager Connor Whitehead has appealed for a person involved in his son's death to hand themselves in. A 32-year-old man accused of shooting the 16-year-old dead at a 15th birthday party on Friday night is in custody along with 3 others also facing charges. But another person believed to have been involved is still at large. Urging that person to come forward, James Whitehead says he and his family are heartbroken.
Connor was an innocent bystander on Friday. He was at a party with his friends. He should have been safe and he should be home with us. Connor had dreams. We're devastated we will not see him live his life and reach his potential.
The police say they've found the weapon used in the shooting. Several people were killed in a collision between a truck and a car on State Highway 1 south of Levin just after 3 this afternoon. The police say the road is still closed in both directions, but they're working to reopen one lane. Central District Road Policing Manager Ashley Gurney, who's at the scene, says officers are piecing together what happened but can't yet confirm how many people have died. There is no viable detour and Waka Kotahi is advising motorists to avoid the area. The leader of the opposition says that if the Prime Minister addressed protesters massed outside Parliament today, it would have likely inflamed the situation. Thousands protesting against COVID-19 restrictions marched through central Wellington to the rally. Judith Collins says messages targeted at politicians were posted to social media before the protest, which is probably what led to the tightened security.
Some of the messages were quite violent, and I expect that Parliament has taken those into account. Parliamentary security have a difficult job to do because we are a very open democracy and we like to have people able to access Parliament and to protest.
An iwi leader in Taumaranui says the fight against COVID-19 can't be led from behind a desk in the city if Māori in isolated rural settlements are to be reached. Maxine Ketu of Ngāti Hauā says the health system must allow iwi to go beyond the mainstream vaccination model in order to reach Māori. She told Local Democracy Reporting Ngāti Hauā are pulling together with the Ruapehu District Council and community organisations for a major vaccination drive to lift some of the country's lowest vaccination rates. Sea fog and volcanic gases from Whakaari White Island have created a volcanic fog phenomena along the eastern Bay of Plenty coast today. Sam Ollie reports.
Whakatane residents told RNZ they could smell sulphur, and there was low visibility of the island this afternoon, prompting concerns of an eruption. GNS, however, says there hasn't been an eruption, but sulphuric volcanic gases from the island have mixed with atmospheric moisture, driven onshore by light northerly winds. The fog can make eyes water and sting, and those with respiratory health issues should be cautious. It can also be a hazard for road, air and ocean traffic.
Poland has deployed extra troops along its eastern frontier with Belarus and will close a major border crossing as it tries to stop thousands of migrants from entering the country. The BBC's Adam Easton reports.
Today's events look like an escalation in this activity, which we've seen not just in Poland but Lithuania and Latvia since the beginning of the summer. A huge surge in the number of migrants, mostly from the Middle East, but also from Afghanistan, African countries, trying to cross into the EU from Belarus. All of those countries and the European Union say President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus is orchestrating this new migratory route in retaliation for the bloc's sanctions against his regime.
It's 6:04. Copy That has won the New Zealand Trotting Cup at Christchurch's Addington Raceway. Its driver Blair Orange's fourth race with the horse and his third win. With $600,000 in prize money, the 3,200-metre race is the richest harness racing event in the country. Black Caps coach Gary Stead doesn't believe his players are getting the credit they deserve for their recent success at major cricket tournaments. New Zealand are through to the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup in the UAE and will play England early on Thursday morning. They also reached the last four at the tournament in 2016, have been runners-up in the two most recent 50-over World Cups, and this year won the inaugural World Test Championship.
I'm not sure when you line each player up man for man that a lot of people give us, I guess, the credit that perhaps some of these guys deserve. It's a pretty experienced group of guys now who know each other's game very, very well, and as a collective group that we do fight hard, and that's all I guess I keep asking for. The results at the end of the day will look after themselves if we do those little things well.
And All Blacks halfback Aaron Smith has been called into the squad for the rest of the European tour as injury cover. Smith remained in New Zealand for the birth of his second child and had not been expected to play in any part of the tour, but a head knock to Brad Weber has prompted a change of plan. The All Blacks play Ireland in Dublin on Sunday and France in Paris the following weekend. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Tony Stamp samples the latest from the world of the popular song. In episode 3 of Transparent, documenting Joe Stockhausen's gender transition from female to male, Joe moves into the surgical phase. And autism researcher Dr. Lisa Marie Emerson. On why it's time we heard more from those on the spectrum about what they want to know. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Wednesday for Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. Generally fine. Isolated showers this evening. Bay of Plenty, the Central High Country, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and the Tararua district. Mainly fine. Isolated showers inland with possible thunderstorms in the evenings. Areas of low cloud overnight. Waikato to Wellington, also Wairarapa, excluding the Tararua district, Marlborough and Nelson. Fine apart from areas of low cloud or fog overnight and again tomorrow night. Bullets to Fiordland, areas of cloud, especially in the south. Patchy drizzle in Fiordland today and elsewhere tomorrow. For Canterbury, mostly cloudy with a few drizzle patches tomorrow morning. Some fine breaks in the afternoons. For Southland and Otago, fine spells. Isolated showers possible inland. Areas of low cloud or fog overnight and tomorrow night. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy with occasional drizzle. It's 6:07.
Thanks, Marama. No mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. The government's joined the backup band, announcing a scheme to underwrite summer festivals killed by COVID. But like with all good gigs, there's a number of riders. Taxpayers will stump up 90% of unrecoverable costs if events have to be canned or postponed due to the virus and alert level restrictions. To qualify for the safety net, events need to be ticketed, have an audience of at least 5,000, use vaccination certificates and be scheduled scheduled between December the 17th and April the 3rd. Now, one that fits the bill is Rhythm and Vines in Turanganuia-Kiwa, Gisborne, and the festival founder, Hamish Pinkham, joins me now. Kia ora, Hamish. How much does this change things for you?
Good evening, Lisa. Well, it's finally some positive news to get behind for our patient and hardworking team and our punters and our artists and contractors and everyone that's involved with the event in Gisborne. And it gives us a bit of a safety net as we come into this, this period at the end of the year where, patients is wearing thin, deposits are being made, and there's a huge risk on promoters to keep our dream alive and ensure that Kiwis can kind of have a good summer. So, yeah, we're really, really positive news from our end today.
So, knowing what you know right now, if there wasn't this government policy and safety net, would you be pushing ahead with R&V, or would you have to make a decision to pull the pin?
I think it would be certainly reckless trading from our end if we were coming into this period. We have had positive, news. They have been alluding to saving summer. We will get our road trips. We will get our festivals. But commercial realities are, as soon as you start stumping up for deposits and building a festival site, it gets a pretty expensive exercise. So today we've got some support heading into this period that, hey, if we have to pull up stumps come New Year's, there will be some support for these large-scale events, which are, not cheap and not easy to put together.
Have you got overseas acts that you've paid for and have been able to make arrangements to bring in?
Yeah, we have had some commitments for some time and deposits have been paid. And in this COVID environment, there is, a lot of gentlemen's agreements to, retract, if in the case there are lockdowns. But as we head into this period, closer to the event, people are about to jump on flights. They're about to head into MIQ for, days on end. It's certainly a precious time for everyone's, time and money so heading into this period, we've got a handful of international acts. We've been lucky in the lottery. We've joined the queue like a lot of industries and a lot of Kiwis returning home. So we've got a number of international acts that will be joining us. We've got the best of the Kiwi acts. And, of course, the Gisborne contractors, everyone involved with the festival, the production staff, the security, all the hardworking team will have, I guess, some security that we can keep working these last few weeks and work towards pulling off the event.
In your heart of hearts, do you believe that Tairawhiti is going to get to 90% double vaxxed in time for R&V?
No, I think we've all looked at the models and it's going to be a huge challenge. I guess as promoters, we will be taking health advice at the time. We don't set the public health policy, but as of today, it is certainly going to be a challenge to get to those numbers. But in the light of day, in the coming weeks, we know there's a big meeting and announcement being made at the end of the month, and I think we'll all be better placed to attack what's the next hurdle for the festival is ensuring we can run the event safely within the public health policy in Gisborne, and we'll certainly be taking all the advice and the direction from government on that at the time.
It's previously been stated publicly, although not by you, that the festival will not go ahead if there's not 90% vaccination rates. So even if the government were to lower its expectations, open things up when they meet on the 29th of November, would you go ahead with the festival or not if the region is not at 90% double dosed?
Yeah, well, Minister Kerry Allen made that statement at the end of the last week, and she was really reiterating what we already know, don't we, that events and mass gatherings won't be able to take place within the 90% until the 90% mandate is achieved. But as I said, we all know there's going to be, some meeting at the end of the month, some discussion about how we can operate safely, and we'll be better placed to make a decision if we can go ahead under the health guidelines, which we'll be following. So, yeah, we're all waiting.
So, Hamish, not to be too blunt, you were betting on that, the government meeting on the 29th of November and the hope that they may alter the targets for the district that you want to hold the festival in.
Well, that's the only opportunity we've got, because as this stands, a lot of events and a lot of regions can't hold these events. So the news today gave us some security. We can wait the coming weeks, and our team's ready to go. We're on pause, we're on hold, and we'll be better placed to make a decision about push and go when a clearer picture is presented.
Obviously, you were in discussions, and we know, in discussions with the government about this insurance policy, right? Have they given you any hints as to what's going to happen on the 29th of November? Are you getting signals that you're going to be safe around that vaccination target?
No, we're not getting anything that I don't think the wider public know, but we've had this positive news from Stuart Nash today. He's been encouraging us to hang in there, to not make any rash decisions, and the government will support, these larger events to keep trading in this environment. But in terms of decisions made in the coming weeks, I don't think so. We all know some of the targets we need to get to. There's been a lot of promotion and movement from our end to get our punters on board with the mandate. And I think just everyone's working as hard as they can to get, the country and the regions in the best position to have a summer together.
Thanks for joining us, Hamish. That's Hamish Pinkham, who is one of the founders of Rhythm and Vines, the music festival in Gisborne. In breaking news, police have this afternoon located a man they were seeking in relation to the death of Connor Whitehead. The man was taken into custody at a residential address in Avonside at around 5:15 this afternoon. So just to reiterate that, if you're just joining us, the police have arrested a person that they were seeking in relation to the death of Connor Whitehead. A health expert wants Air New Zealand to go a step further and implement a no jab, no fly rule domestically. The airlines announced travellers who are 12 and over will need to show proof of vaccination or a recent negative COVID test to board internal flights from mid-December. As Samantha G reports, most are welcoming it, but some are worried it could lead to COVID spread.
As we head into summer, people are making plans to jet around the country. Making sure they don't bring COVID with them is key, and Air New Zealand's policy hopes to do just that. In the South Island, it's got clear support.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's just going to keep the country safe. Look, I think it's good. It's for the protection of those people who have gone and got vaccinated.
That's fair enough too. You've got to think of everybody else's safety and the country as a whole.
It means unvaccinated passengers can still travel if they show a negative test within 3 days of flying.
I don't have an issue with that, and I think I think that's a nice compromise, to be perfectly fair. However, I think that there needs to be easier means of testing, and they need to advance the use of the saliva tests a little bit quicker than what they are now.
At some point, we all have to start mingling again. COVID's not going away. People who are vaccinated seem very unlikely to die from the disease, so if you're vaccinated and you travel, that's probably not a big risk. If you're choosing not to get vaccinated, I suppose at some point the rest of the country can't wait for you anymore and we have to allow movement again.
But not everyone thinks that's enough to prevent the virus from spreading.
Forget about the negative tests, you just got to be vaccinated for everybody's sake. End of story. I think if they prove positive later, it's too late, isn't it, when you've been with all those people? No, just be vaccinated.
That sentiment is echoed by epidemiologist Dr. Rod Jackson, who says the measures are a good start.
I would have gone further and, no jab, no flights at all would be my preference. I guess I'm hoping that this is just an interim, that they allow people with negative tests on, because we know there are cases where people have had a negative test and then have subsequently tested positive.
One of the recent cases in Christchurch tested negative for COVID-19 in Auckland before travelling, only returning a positive result at home once they became symptomatic. Air New Zealand Chief Executive Greg Foran says it didn't want to exclude unvaccinated people from flying.
We think it's appropriate that people all around New Zealand can travel, and we're also cognizant that at many ports we are the only form of air travel. So, as I said, we don't want to leave anyone behind.
In Queenstown, Mayor Jim Bolt is supportive of the airline's policy, which he said provides New Zealanders with assurance travellers are as close as they can be to not having COVID.
I was at the business function last Saturday night, and there wouldn't have been an operator there who didn't say to me, gee, I can't wait to see the Auckland market back, because they are 60% of our domestic business, so the whole town is very keen to see them back.
Mayor Bolt says while the spread of COVID is inevitable, those in the Queenstown Lakes district were prepared, with more than 98% of people having had one dose of the vaccine and 88% fully vaccinated against the virus.
It is 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. An Aucklander with COVID-19 has confined herself to a caravan in her backyard and says she feels abandoned by health authorities. About 2,000 people with the virus are isolating at home, and those supporting them say the public health system is struggling to keep up. Katie Todd reports.
On her 16th day of COVID-19 symptoms, this woman isolating at home says things are getting a bit lonely and a bit scary. She's received a food parcel and a few phone calls, but says she's been unable to get detailed health advice, pain relief medication, or a mobile testing unit to check her family is okay.
I could be dying and no one even realises. So I've been trying to get my parents tested still, even today. The helpline kept telling me that they're going to send a van up, but no one's came.
The woman, who is reluctant to get vaccinated, lives in West Auckland with her 2 sons and 2 parents and tested positive for the virus last week. When health authorities asked if she would like to go into MIQ, she says she declined because she didn't know much about it and didn't want to leave her family without support. She's quarantined herself in a caravan instead. Now her father's showing symptoms and her own health is going downhill.
I feel like it'll start stabbing my heart. Like for the last 2 weeks I've been sweet, but then 2 days ago I had this big dizzy spell. But yes, last night I just felt like it was just stabbing into my heart. I don't know what that is.
According to the Ministry of Health, each COVID-19 patient isolating at home should get a leaflet with advice and a pack with everything they need to monitor their health. A medical officer of health undertakes a public health risk assessment, looking at how safe the person is at home and what they might need. Then a health professional calls daily to check in. But groups supporting self-isolating patients say there are too many people staying home who should be in managed isolation, and it's taking health authorities too long, in some cases days, to get in touch. Health Minister Andrew Little says he's disappointed to hear of people left without support, like a man with COVID-19 who spent almost a week in his car because he couldn't isolate safely at home.
But so far, the assurance that I and other ministers have received is that they are on top of that.
Auckland Councillor Daniel Newman has been delivering food parcels to people with the virus. He believes home isolation can work, but he thinks the Ministry of Health has mandated it before putting in place enough financial, emotional and welfare support for COVID-19 patients.
What I can say from first-hand experience, if the support isn't there on a daily basis, if the outreach isn't there every single day of that home isolation, I think the risk of failure increases, and obviously we can't allow that to happen.
In the meantime, another group helping to plug the gap are the Student Volunteer Army. They've helped with food deliveries, donated a washing machine to a family who couldn't visit the laundromat, and even helped bail someone from Mount Eden prison while their lawyer isolated at home. Its president Sam Johnson says the group are tackling requests other agencies are too busy to handle, and sometimes they hear from COVID-19 patients directly.
We're seeing an increase in requests, particularly as other organisations have their volunteers get tired or a little burnt out. We really like providing additional support to those sort of organisations. But I guess generally the level of phone calls from people is going up as the number of people in self-isolation goes up.
Director General of Health Ashley Bloomfield has acknowledged the system is under pressure. He says the Ministry of Health is working to get more resources to help support and contact people isolating at home.
Barack Obama stole the show at COP26 today, but New Zealand has been given the crucial task of making sure countries' pledges and reduction efforts are not at all just hot air. The fate of island nations most vulnerable to sea level rise was the centre of discussion at the UN climate meeting in Glasgow today. Climate reporter Hamish Cardwell has more.
President Barack Obama brought some star power to the start of the second week of the COP26 climate summit. He told young people they were right to be annoyed at his generation.
I want you to stay angry. I want you to stay frustrated. But channel that anger. Harness that frustration. Gird yourself for a marathon, not a sprint.
Mr. Obama said island nations were the climate change canaries in the coal mine. He met with a coalition of island states, the EU and the US, about how to help them. New Zealand is also a member, but Climate Change Minister James Shaw says he simply didn't have time to make that meeting with Obama.
I honestly haven't had a chance to check in with the
coalition today. I've just been in a whole series of back-to-back meetings. I was in a different meeting at which President Obama was speaking, and the meeting that I was in was about the resilience of islands in the face of sea level rise and other effects of climate change like cyclone resilience and so on. That was a pretty robust meeting, I have to say.
Meanwhile, Mr Shaw has been given the task of co-leading talks on transparency, how to verify countries are making the cuts they've promised.
It's about a set of rules that come off the back of the Paris Agreement for what countries need to report, when they need to report, how they need to report, and so on. You know, there are countries that are not wholly up for reporting, and so that's a bit of a spike in the negotiations.
COP26's theme today was about adaptation, loss and damage. Basically, how to get rich countries to pay poorer ones for the damage already being suffered by climate change. Countries pledged $232 million in new funding. But poorer countries are still waiting for a promise made by rich ones more than a decade ago to cough up $100 billion a year to fund climate action by 2020. The Director General of the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Programme, Korsi Latu, thinks it could be more than 3 years before the target is reached.
That's a massive, massive disappointment. You know, they should have done it when they said they were going to do it, and, you know, it's not going to get any easier. But it's just not enough. $100 billion is not enough for all of the small island states and developing countries that are at the front line of the adverse impacts of climate change.
But James Shaw says the Pacific countries have forced the issue higher up the list of priorities.
I don't know how much progress we will make at this COP, but I actually do think that it is now one of the main topics of work, and so I'm feeling more hopeful about it than I was, you know, even 6 months ago.
Climate researcher Dr. Natalie Jones, who writes about COP26 negotiations for the UN news service, the Earth Negotiations Bulletin, says some wealthier countries are trying to drag out the talks.
It's a fight among the countries who either want loss and damage as a priority, I guess, in the talks, and then the countries who don't really see it as a priority.
COP26 continues for the rest of the week.
A lot of you getting in touch about the mandatory vaccination required to fly on Air New Zealand or a negative test. Ian's got in touch, and he's a pilot, an international pilot who hasn't worked for 18 months due to the pandemic. Ian says, over the course of my career, to continue my employment, it is mandated for me to complete a proficiency check every 6 months, plus a medical assessment every 12 months. The reason for this? Safety. I'm sure when the protesters in Wellington get on a plane, they are pleased that we have to go through such a process. In the interests of the safety of my family and plus our community, can these people please front up for a one-off 2-jab vaccination? Not too much to ask, says Ian. On the government underwriting the festival season this summer, this listener says our NGO runs 2 large festivals each summer, definitely thousands, but not 5,000, which is the requirement from the government. Free for the community, but not free to organise, they say, and therefore our community's wellbeing, not economic gain. So I guess that the government sees that as less important. The level of risk still exists for us too. Another listener reckons that the insurance underwrite is a great idea to underwrite the festivals. It's the right cut-off if they truly canvass the industry. They say they don't plan to attend a festival, but they reckon people will need them this summer. Kevin from Napier says, when we have people who can't afford to put food on the table, find somewhere to live, and with inflation running at 5%, to fund private business to ensure that people can have a good time is pathetic. A lack of moral compass and objective decision-making is all I can say for this political payoff, says Kevin. Some believe imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but not Tina Turner, it seems. The legendary singer is suing a tribute act in Germany for looking too much like her. The BBC's Charlotte Gallagher has the story.
The real Tina Turner singing one of her most famous hits. And this is Dorothea Coco Fletcher performing the same song. There's no question that Fletcher sounds like Tina Turner, but that's not why the musical superstar is unhappy. It's because her impersonator looks so much like her. At the centre of the row is a show called Simply the Best, The Tina Turner Story, which Dorothea Fletcher stars in. It's toured in Germany, Austria and Switzerland, and it's the poster advertising the performance which the legal action is based on. It's a picture of Dorothea Fletcher as Tina Turner, but lawyers argue that the tribute photo, along with the name of the show, could mislead people into believing the real Tina Turner would be performing. 2 courts in Germany, where promoters of the tribute show are based, have already ruled against Tina Turner's claim. It will now be decided by the German Federal Court of Justice, the country's highest court. If Turner wins, it could have legal implications for other tribute acts. A lawyer for the concert promoter has called on judges to apply the standard of a reasonably well-informed person, and not one who, as they put it, is chronically stupid and sees everything superficially. For now, though, the case is rolling on.
And we're rolling, yeah. Rolling on the river.
OK, some of your feedback on teachers who aren't getting vaccinated. This listener says teachers who don't believe in science and put their own misinformed rights ahead of the wider social good of children. Children, these are not people we can trust our kids' learnings and lives with. Another person says, I'm a teacher. I don't understand a teacher not putting children's safety and their own at risk. Did they have polio, MRI, TB vax as children? And on the subject of this government insurance policy for the summer festivals, underwriting unrecoverable costs if they get cancelled due to COVID. One listener says, let the market take the risk. Another person says, $200 million for festivals when Nash refuses to assist around 150 family-owned accommodation and hospo businesses in the Lower South Island. We only need $100 million. His picking winners policy is shameful, they say. That's all we've got time for. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō. From tomorrow, 5 a.m. on First Up, they're going to speak to the family of a 93-year-old dementia patient with COVID-19 at the centre of a West Auckland rest home outbreak. That's from 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Kaua e wari te atatero I a motu kōrero. Don't forget, you can check out all our stories and videos online on our webpage. Have a fantastic evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Same place, same time.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening.